Here we are. Good afternoon. This is a hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on May 3rd, 2023, in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Regulations. My name is Bob Rawls and I serve as the chair. Today's hearing is being broadcast live on Channel 18 and is being recorded for the on-demand archives available on the town's website. It's being conducted in person, by phone, and by video conference. The agenda, instructions on how to attend, and copies of documents for review are posted on the town's website. To all participants, whether attending by phone or online, please remain muted unless you have been recognized by the chair. When recognized, please identify yourself for the record. If you are attending by phone, you can mute and unmute by using *6. If you're online and you're not a commissioner, please keep your camera turned off unless you have been recognized. Indicate that you wish to speak by using the raise hand feature. So that we have a record of a quorum, I'll now ask each commissioner to indicate their presence. Mary Sullivan.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
Bob.
Present.
Janet.
Present.
Karen.
Present.
Elise.
Present.
And we're all here physically, right? So I'm here as well, so we have a full house. I'm just going to make a quick reminder. I noted this last time, but just for those who weren't here last time, we've changed a little bit about how we do our business. We're still meeting 3 times a month, first, second, and fourth Wednesdays, but now we've combined applications and orders of conditions. We'll be doing some of each normally in each session. Each of the 3 sessions will be televised, whereas before only work sessions were not televised, but we don't really have work sessions per se anymore. We're hoping this will allow us to get the orders processed more quickly. Also, note for today, we have a hard stop at 4 o'clock due to another hearing in this room. This leaves us 3 hours. We have a moderate length agenda today. So I'm not sure if I'll be needing to time applications, but I do urge those who might go on that I may have to cut you off in the interest of time. So please, as usual, keep your comments to the point and concise, and we will do the same. So Nikki Smith, Chatham's conservation agent, is here remotely and will lead us through the agenda.
The first application is for a request for determination of applicability for 49 Gillis Road, Elizabeth and Spencer Kennard, map 4C, parcel 13 CG1, R23-7, deck expansion.
Mr. Kennard, are you here? Oh, please come up. You can either go there or you can go there, whichever suits your purpose. Perfect, yep.
Good afternoon.
And I see that Nikki is projecting one of your plans, so, all right.
Okay.
Yep.
My name is Spencer Kennard. I live at 49.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you push the button on your, to make sure.
There you go. It's green. Gotcha. My name is Spencer Kennard. I live at 49 Gillis Road, South Chatham. And I had written a letter to the Conservation Commission stating that we would like to build a deck at our home on 49 Gillis Road. My wife Elizabeth grew up in the house built in the 1950s. The property was purchased by her grandparents in the 1920s. It has always been treasured and viewed as the best place in the whole wide world, and adding a deck has been a goal of ours for many years. The site plan, which you all have, shows the deck as being a wraparound connected from the front of our porch, an existing porch, to the street side, to the back of it facing the Mill Creek Marsh. The back will stretch out 12 feet and is 18 feet wide. That becomes 6 feet wide, running the length of the porch. The deck size is approximately 500 square feet, which requires about 1,000 feet of mitigation, which will consist of 10 beach plum, as they grow very well on our property, and they expand to about 10 feet by 10 feet, We also plan to add some shadblow and inkberry bushes, which are also beneficial for the birds and other wildlife. The footings will be diamond piers. I've sent you a brochure of. They will not be sonotubes, so there is no need for any heavy machinery or deep digging. And we think the impacts to resources and coastal bank are minimal. We are requesting a negative determination with any conditions you want to propose. We try to be good stewards to our surroundings, as this is our home that was passed on to us, and we will pass on to our children, and hopefully onward from there. Sincerely, Elizabeth and Spencer Kennard.
All right, thank you. So for a little historical context, you came before us a couple years ago?
A couple years ago,
Couple years
correct.
ago. Was that once or twice? I can't remember.
Once during the, I guess, the very early stages of the pandemic, and it wasn't a full meeting.
Right, okay. So, right. So we had questions and concerns then, and
Right, I think, well, I've tried to address some of them.
Right.
Basically, I've reduced the frontward part of the deck by a couple of feet. But there was concern about digging in the ground, and I'm hoping the diamond piers will help address that part, so there'll be no digging. They're very easy to put in. And you were also looking for an updated site plan, which you now have.
right. And I think at that time, the plan showed incursion onto the coastal bank, and this one does not. Is that?
It's minimum, I mean,
Yeah,
there's one section
okay.
that comes in maybe a square foot.
All right. Let me ask you a mathematical question. And that is that you're asking for an RDA, which means, an RDA means normally there's no impact or very, very minimal impact to a resource area. And you calculate 500 square feet for your deck. And I guess you've doubled that
That's what I was told.
for the mitigation.
That's what I was told it had to
That's
be.
1,000 square feet, which is 100 by 100, right?
Right.
And so that, if you're saying a shadwith consumes 10,
The beach plum.
I'm sorry, yeah, beach plum concerns 10 feet, that would add, to me, maybe, I'm not very good at math, but I think that's 100 plants instead of 10 plants. I don't know if everybody else wants to check me on that, but I just wanted to mention that so you can be thinking about it. And
All right.
that's not a central issue for me. Oh, we have a hand raised in the back?
1,000 square feet would be 10 by 100.
Are you associated with the applicant?
No, I'm just saying it's 10 by
10, 10 by 100, I see what you mean. So that's, what, 50 plants? How many plants?
Square feet.
He's thinking a beach plum plant is, at maturity, will grow
10
10
feet
feet
wa-
by 10 feet,
Feet, which is
which is 100 square feet.
feet. So 10 of those would be 1,000.
Times 10 is 1,000.
We're looking at
10
1,000.
times 100, right, is 1,000.
None of us can get this calculated.
That's fourth grade.
I dwelled on that too, so, I wanted to make sure I was coming up with a.
Just not sure it's 10, but we'll come back to that. I'm just not sure it's 10 plants, but, all right. And with that mathematical conundrum, I also question whether or not they consume 10 feet, but we'll get into that later too. Questions, comments from anyone?
Yes, because I think his math is that each plant will cover 100 square feet. It'll be a 10 by,
Each plant would consume,
I mean, that,
oh, I see what you mean.
10 by 10,
Yes.
yes.
100 square
at
feet.
maturity.
At maturity.
So that's 100 square feet, and so 10 of them would cover 1,000 square feet.
You're an engineer.
Yeah, well, that's, I cannot speak to whether it will or not from a plant. That's
Yeah,
what I
got
was
it. Okay,
referring
good.
to
Thank
him.
you, thank you. All
But
right.
from mathematically, it is
Got it.
correct.
All right. So, questions, comments from anyone?
Just on that, they're also mentioning inkberry and serviceberry, but it's a little vague on,
It's not specified where those go, so we'll.
right. So, yeah, we'll figure that out as well during the conversation.
Well, let's get into that right now. So the beach plums at maturity will be 10 by 10 or thereabouts. What size are you thinking about putting in at this point, and how long will that take to get to that point?
Well, I'm planning to buy, I mean, if you go to buy a plant, it starts off this size, and then you plant it, and then it,
Yeah, I know,
Goes to
but they're
that.
done by gallons normally,
Right.
the size of the container. You
Right.
didn't specify what size you're going to put in, whether it's 1 gallon, 3, 5. It makes a difference in terms of when the environment is able to get the benefit of what you're doing.
I don't have an answer to that, but I will get, I was up at the, was it I forgot the name of the place, it's up in Falmouth, where you can go buy plants at a discount rate, and they had a whole bunch of beach plum, and they all looked like they were this big.
Okay. The plants themselves.
And then,
That's a decent size.
that's the size, 2.5 gallon thing,
Okay.
5 gallon, I'm not positive.
Part of the reason I'm asking is that when you get to this level in a proposal where you're proposing mitigation and, we're pushing back to find out exactly the number, the size, the spacing, where they're going to be, all of that comes through in conditions that we would do in an order of conditions. But this is an RDA, so it's harder. We don't have the ability to write a lot of conditions, so we're going to be left with probably just using the plans that you have submitted. So that's why I'm looking for some specificity on them.
Okay,
because we don't have
they're
the
not going to be
ability.
twigs. I mean, I'm hoping it's going to be a substantial plant that survives and grows. We have quite a few on our property as it is, and they've done very well, so.
Yep. I get that. I went back to my notes from the hearing in May of 2021, and I found that at that time, our recommendation to you had been to submit a notice of intent rather than try to get this done as a RDA for this very reason, because you're proposing mitigation and there is 500 square feet of impact, and we can debate among ourselves whether that is no impact or so minimal that it fits. So I was a little surprised to see it come through as an RDA again, because it just presents,
Well, one of the main issues
Problems.
was having a site plan that had all the information on it. And,
yep,
having done that and changing there was concern about digging in the ground and things like that, and I tried to address all that.
yep. And you also changed the configuration, so.
Just a little bit, a
Yeah,
little
why-
smaller,
Yeah,
so.
okay. Yeah, I didn't want to get into trying to compare it to the old one, because it's not really relevant. We didn't vote on it or do anything with it. I mean, I suppose we could just add the specificity to the site plan. Put the planting list there, the number of, what is it, beach plums?
Beach plum,
What else, shad?
jad and inkberry.
Yeah, and inkberry. If you list those and the sizes on that, at least it's on, so we know what was actually approved and what should be there. So
Okay.
that would, I don't know, tell me,
I don't know either. It is awkward for us because this, as Janet noted, even then, your application really went beyond what we normally consider to be an RDA. And I think it still does. Because we can't condition it. And once we issue a negative determination, that's the end of it. We don't have the ability to go back out 3 years later and say, did you do all the things that you said
You're
you
more than welcome to come and look at it. I promise you, I will plant
Well,
things
I
that
know,
will survive there.
but the process that we are supposed to work within is prescribed to us. It's not like it's just not an opinion on our part. So it's a struggle for me to treat this as an RDA, because if it were an RDA, you wouldn't come before us and say, I have 1,000 square feet of mitigation, because that automatically says to me, well, that's what an NOI is all about. But you shouldn't need any mitigation if it were true negative determination, because it's a minimal impact. So by saying that you're offering 1,000 square feet of mitigation, which is not an insubstantial amount, that my brain just automatically goes into NOI mode. That's because we have to We have to talk about it, maybe change it some, get it documented, et cetera. So it doesn't really fit into an RDA. I'm not saying how I'm going to vote one way or another on this, but it's difficult. It's difficult. Just saying, I'm trying to tell you the reasons why it's difficult to vote on as an RDA.
And is there any difference between a deck above ground, which is what it is, versus, I mean, so the footings are at the ground level and everything else is above ground? I'm just trying to get in my head why.
We have approved decks in the past, to my recollection, where they were replacements of decks in a resource area via an RDA, because the act allows you to do normal repairs upon an existing structure. This is a new structure, so it's a little different, even though it's still a deck. So,
Okay.
anyway, other comments from anyone? Thoughts? Would you be, I guess the salient question, are you comfortable treating this through the RDA process?
I think that last point helps me to get more comfortable with it, that it is above ground, it is on the diamond piers, so the actual impact to the resource area, which is the buffer zone, it's not like the patio, where
No.
it's a direct impact. This is an indirect impact, because what the impact of this deck will be is shading beneath it, which will, that's another thing that we would want to put in there. What we would want you to be obligated to plant some kind of really shade-tolerant species in there for erosion protection, so that water doesn't start running down that slope, and shade-tolerant that can handle being underneath a deck. Other people have put gravel or stones or something like that under decks, again, for erosion control purposes. So that's another issue. But it is not a direct impact to the resource area. But I'm talking myself back into the but it is quite steep, you know, so there are erosion issues. Bob, you're the expert in this.
Last time you talked about removing an oak tree.
I decided it stays.
Okay.
Oh, that's good news.
That's important. Yeah, I mean, you talked about inkberry as well. I mean, inkberry could be planted around the perimeter of the deck to hide the empty space underneath the deck.
Yes.
And as far as what Janet says about erosion, yeah, it is on a kind of an incline, so if you
I
maybe...
was hoping to put some grass that would grow there with the jute landscaping over it to,
Yeah, I'm not
that
sure,
in
though,
place.
I'm not sure if we're
But if-
talking about underneath the deck, I'm not sure if grass would grow underneath the deck, but
well,
maybe even stone.
sure, whatever. I'm just thinking, we get a fair amount of sun. I mean, I don't think it's really going to be that dark under there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, okay.
We have
All right.
pretty good sunlight coming in from the east, and then it'll come in from the south.
So maybe like a ground cover would survive, you think?
I think I would do that. I mean, I would start that way, and if it's not working, then I would choose another route, the stone or whatever you'd like.
And then the beach plum would be helpful. Where the beach plum is, that's proposed to be planted, that's on a slope.
Correct.
It's going to take an awful long time for them to get 10 feet by 10 feet.
If ever.
But, yeah, if you...
Well, that's why I was supplementing some inkberry, and the
Yeah.
shad doesn't really get that big. It gets a little
Yeah,
bit.
we'd have to
Each
get-
plum's,
We'd have to get,
the inkberry tends to come out to about 6 feet.
yeah, so we'd have to get some
Mature.
numbers from you, too, maybe to... Janet said, propose that you put it on the plan, so that would hopefully work. And that's about all I have.
Okay, Bob. Nikki, just from a technical perspective, are we limited by the number of conditions that we can attach to an RDA?
And I mean, it basically just gives you a section to write a paragraph, or I can attach a cover letter to it.
Can we attach the plan?
I kind of just thought this is a deeper conversation beyond this hearing, but do we want to at some point come up with some sort of town certificate of compliance for RDAs that get us out there? But I don't know. I mean, that just occurred to me, so I haven't even really thought about it. But I think with this one, because I'm not really hearing that anyone actually has a problem necessarily with the deck, it's just more of making sure the mitigation survives and is in a big enough area, and that there's not a runoff issue under the deck, that I think if we added a couple more construction notes, you know, like either gravel, you know, larger stone under the deck, or try and plant it if the plants don't survive or grass doesn't take, then go back to the stone. You know, just I think a couple additional notes would kind of get what our point across, or will get the point across that, sorry, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Get the point
I think I
across
do.
of
I
what
think I do.
We're
Yeah.
asking for.
All right. So we can somehow finagle, if, well, I'm sort of getting ahead of you. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Nikki, can we attach the plan to the determination?
Yes, I don't see why not.
Okay.
But how would we handle the checkup after it's all done? Because as you know, with an RDA, the idea behind an RDA is that it isn't necessary because there was no impact, where obviously this is more than that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those that's like, I think we even talked about it. This was honestly my first hearing when I started.
Wow.
This was on it. So that's why I remember it. But it's one of those that's right on the cusp between RDA and NOI. And so I can see both sides of, you know, you want to have the conditions that the mitigation is done and that it survived, and we go out there in a few years and it's good.
But would we go out there in a few years? We wouldn't, since it's an RDA, we wouldn't really know to do
Right.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no certificate of compliance that they have to seek.
That is, yes, that's I think the issue we're dealing with, not so much the project is
The verification.
as proposed, as is, does it get done as it was proposed?
Right. So steps outside that process, you know, it just doesn't. I want to prove this because it's a deck, but it doesn't fit into what we're supposed to use in terms of process, and that's the problem for me. And I don't know how to get around it. As Janet said, the understanding was you would come back with an NOI this time around,
That's what I wrote.
and that would solve everything from our perspective.
Can you explain that then? I'm not sure what the NOI means.
NOI is, it's more involved. It's more things to fill out, but it allows us to write an order of conditions when it's all said and done that say, we approve this, but we want you to do the following things. And then in 3 years, you are obligated to come back and file for a certificate of compliance to say, I did what I was supposed to do. And then the agent goes out there and looks around and says, check, 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 you did it all.
Okay,
Otherwise, with an RDA, we don't have that mechanism.
all right.
But that's just me. Other people here speak up.
I
mean,
am-
we have the ability to make independent decisions about things, so
I
let's
am
go ahead and-
sympathetic.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to what you're
And
bringing
to me,
before.
it's a deck, and I promise you, I will plant things, and you can come and look at it.
Mr.
I will
Kennard.
invite you over, we can sit on the deck and look down.
We have been made promises
Yeah.
so many times.
No, you can have that
So
in
it's
writing.
the bad apples that are ruining it for you.
So,
Yes.
Well, no, I mean, like what Bob was saying, though, is I think the one thing that the NOI process allows us is also a permanent record, so that should something happen and this whole board changes in 5 years and you want to do something else, if we do the RDA, there's no record, basically, because we've said, oh, there was no impact. So we don't know. It's, I think it's better for longevity if we follow the process of NOI, but it's also a deck and you're not really impacting, so I can see
Both ways.
both ways. So I'm not being very helpful.
We're all seeing it both ways, I think.
Well, there's also, very often when there's mitigation, we ask that there be a mow strip or something to protect the mitigation and things like that. And irrigation, is there going to, things that we don't permit. And so this is, true, it's a deck, there's minimal impact from the deck, but it's the rest. And maybe since we could attach the plan to an RDA, if you put more information on the plan, that, plantings, that whole part, what you will do under the deck, maybe then we can approve it because it is a minimal impact on ground. It's all above ground.
Elise? I'm pointing at you.
It's a tug of, and thank you for all the discussion. It's a tug of war between bureaucracy and logic.
Let me defend bureaucracy. It's also a process. It's a defined process.
If the house was something that you dream that your grandchildren and your greats and your great-greats are going to have this home as the best place on earth, like you and your wife have enjoyed. But if that house passed to different hands and we didn't have documentation and there was a problem with what happened to the coastal bank, and it's so much better to document it with notice of intent and the details and the conditions. It's just ease of mind for the town and the people who succeed us. On the other hand,
It's a deck.
it's a deck that doesn't touch the earth. Other than through the diamond piers that you changed from sonotubes, which is a wonderful, you really adjusted, as I read the history, you adjusted everything that was objected to before, so
All right, so we're totally conflicted.
we're conflicted.
Nikki, help us out.
So not to throw another little pin in this, but you'll notice later on the agenda, there's a COC for this property. So I don't know if maybe keeping that keeping that order open would maybe be an option, because that would get me back out there. So I don't know the expiration date now that I'm thinking about it, but
Dr. Duncanson has an opinion. There we go.
Sorry. For the bureaucratic part, you could put a condition on the RDA that requires an inspection by the agent or a certificate of compliance.
Okay.
That's just a piece of paper.
All right.
You could just put a condition on the RDA,
All right.
the determination. You could certainly attach the plan to the RDA and have that spelled out in your determination, with whatever additional notes, the commission would like to see on that plan. So there will be a record of this. We keep RDAs in the file, so 10 years from now, that RDA and that plan will still be part of the record.
Yep, all right, thank you, that's helpful. One more fly in the ointment, as if we needed another one. This sets a precedent, or could. So others might come before us and say, it's just a deck, we can do this with an RDA, and maybe it's more impact than yours. So it's possible that we create problems for ourselves. But nevertheless, it sounds like, let's take a straw vote. Who's in favor of a negative determination on this with a bunch of conditions?
If, as long as the plan comes back with everything that we
Yeah.
want on it, that we can
Yeah,
attach that.
as long as we can add the note that, Nikki goes out there in a year.
Yes, okay,
Then,
And get a certificate of compliance,
yes.
as Dr. Bob said.
yeah,
Right, right, good
yeah,
point.
then
All right, so it looks like we're in favor of it, negative, but we're going to have to condition the heck out of it, which you normally don't do, but we will.
I also think we need the plan to have more spelled out.
It does, it does. I think the mitigation aspect of your plan is vague. So what we would normally see with a planting plan, which, when you get 1,000 square feet of plantings, we want to see a plan that says plant, species, And so that whenever the agent goes out there, he or she can say, yeah, he did what we asked them to do.
So
So-
in your crosshatched section there, your mitigation, instead of those lines, you could indicate where these plants are going to go. They don't have to be exact, but where the beach plums, the inkberry, shadblow, all of them. And I would also note in there that you've got a cesspool in the middle of that mitigation area that needs to be planted around. I don't think you can plant too close to it.
No, I
So.
understand that.
Is there a pathway, are you contemplating a pathway between the deck and the mitigation? That's an open area there, is that?
It's a hill, no, not really, no.
Okay, so you can plant right up to, as Bob, right up to the deck and let,
Correct.
you could, so that would give you some more
I
room
would
to
do.
put in some of these other plants. But if you could show that on there and then list the plants that you're talking about, the species, the size, then we could have it all on that plan, that would be very helpful.
I think that would alleviate most of our concerns, is to
Okay.
have a solid planting plan. Yep.
And I think the having the crushed stone underneath the deck to prevent erosion, or a ground cover or a ground cover, as well as maybe the inkberry around the perimeter of the deck. I think you would like as well.
Okay,
If you could depict that and note those things on your plan. In other words, the stone and/or ground cover underneath the deck, inkberry around the deck. And then it's all on the plan, it's a matter of record.
I
Okay.
agree.
And we don't have much time, so we have to move on with this. Any other conditions we want? Okay, so if you could, Mr. Kennard, update that plan with what we talked about, get that to Nikki.
to Nikki, okay.
I think we can vote on our negative RDA for this. A little bit of the honor system here.
I
but
would actually, sorry to interrupt, I would
Okay.
rather just continue to May
Okay.
10th, or
Yeah.
That's fine, that's fine.
just to have the plan in hand. And then also, we were not able to make it out to see the deck for the COC. That's later on in the hearing. So I think we can just maybe continue both of those
Okay,
to, I'm not gonna, I doubt May 10th, because Ryder and Wilcox is gonna have to update the plan, and that's fairly short notice. So maybe the May 24th hearing, if that's all right with everyone, to get maybe the plan notes on, give a chance for hopefully me to be back in the field to go do the COC site visit, or get Paul out there. Yeah, so I'm suggesting a May 24th, if that works.
does that work for you?
May 24th, if that works for Spencer.
Yeah, is that,
For me?
yeah,
Yep, fine, thank you.
okay. All right, we have a plan.
But, I just want to reiterate that it seems like we're on the right track. I don't think we're denying the deck by any means or anything like that. It seems like we're good to go. Just update the plan, and it
Taking
should
up-
be fine.
Make sure we look at it, make sure it's what we think we're asking for. Yeah, I think it's a good plan.
Yeah, just to make sure all the notes that we want are there.
Yep. All right, so we're into the 24th?
Make a motion that we continue 49 Gillis Road to May 24th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Lise.
Aye.
And I vote aye. See you
Quick
then.
question, are you gonna save all the paperwork so I don't have to redo it all? I
Yeah,
had to
no,
make
so all
copies.
we'll need is
Yeah.
a few new copies of the site plan. with
Site
the
plan.
Except for the
stuff.
site
That's
plan.
all we'll need.
Yeah, it's the only
Yeah,
thing
just
that,
the site
it's the only thing you need to update is the site
Okay, it's
plan,
the
and give
site
us a
plan,
new
okay.
copy of that.
Everything else is fine.
Okay, and can I just have a note that's telling me what you're looking for? Well, somehow I get a note of that, just so I remember everything
Yes,
to
I
do
can,
it. Yeah, I can
yeah,
get
I
it
can
from
shoot you an
Nikki.
email that says exactly what we wanted modified on the site plan. And I can, I think David Little did this site plan, so I can CC him on it as well.
Okay, super.
You're getting there.
I'm getting older too. We're all set then?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, the next request for determination of applicability is 57 Diane Drive, David and Elizabeth Renke, map 6C, parcel 66G 119, R23-8, demo of existing garage and construction of a new garage with 760 square foot, 1 bath, 1 bedroom living area above. I don't know if anyone's here. This was the one that was withdrawn from ZBA. Oh, yep, someone is here. All right.
Yes, hi.
Good afternoon. My name's Dave Renke. I'm the owner of the
Could you
property.
push the,
Push the button.
It's got to be green, okay. My name's Dave Renke. I'm the owner of the property at 57 Diane Drive, which my wife and I purchased in 1998, and where we live full-time. The proposed project involves the demolition of the existing single-story two-car garage and replacing it with a new structure consisting of a garage and living area above. The dimensions of the existing garage are 22 by 30.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? We thought that was this withdrawn from ZBA?
It was withdrawn, but it's going to be resubmitted. I did the presentation without counsel, and after discussions at the table during the hearing, I felt as though I needed to go back before them with counsel, and didn't want them to take a vote until I had a chance to discuss with counsel and see if there were any modifications that needed to be done to my proposal.
Well, we assume there are going to be modifications because otherwise you wouldn't have withdrawn it.
The
only reason I ask all this is if we're going to modify it,
yeah,
why are we?
there were no objections to the actual plan, to my knowledge. The objections were questioning what my use of that space was going to be.
Okay.
The project is being built because we have a large family that's expanding and 6 grandkids, and everybody loves to come down to the Cape House. And we don't have enough beds and comfortable areas for people. So Grandma and Grandpa were going to sleep over the garage and have a separate living area while my children and spouses and 6 grandchildren had the opportunity to use the existing house. And they're there during the summer and holidays, but, we have no plans to rent, the property. We can't legally because it's not an official RDU because we're in a floodplain. So there's no cooking facilities. It's basically a wet bar, a bedroom, a closet, and a living area above the garage.
So you don't intend to modify the plan itself?
That's why I'm seeking, legal counsel, to find out what, if anything, I need to change from our original proposal. I'm told I shouldn't have to change anything.
All right. But if you did change it, you wouldn't change the footprint?
No, not necessarily. And
Right.
the existing footprint, we're basically expanding by a foot in either direction and a foot in either, in depth.
You wouldn't change it relative to what you've already presented to?
No, it's basically, I would like to put in what I'm putting in right now, as a living area and a bedroom.
All right, but it's awkward for us, though, to take action on an application that you withdrew it. They didn't vote it down.
Correct,
Okay, you just simply, based on the tenor of the conversation, pulled it back.
exactly.
Okay, all right.
And my plan is to fully go forward with the process, which is why I didn't want to, I still wanted to go through conservation. I still have an issue to address with the Board of Health relative to my Title V septic system, which may need to be modified, but I do want to, proceed with the project. So I fully intend to go back before the zoning board.
Okay.
RDA is to, because I'm entirely within the floodplain, but I am not within 100 feet of a resource area, a specific wetland resource area, I needed to go before conservation to get their approval because I'm demoing and constructing a garage, but it's essentially on the same footprint that it exists now.
Okay.
So again, this is Nikki.
Yep.
Again, this is kind of like the last one. It's more of procedural issues that we're dealing with. So technically, if he withdrew from ZBA, ZBA does not have a current application, which we generally would like to at least have them on the docket
Before we
with
take a,
ZBA before we start approving the conservation permits, because we want to know, I want Sarah's opinion on whether, I want her opinion letter that we get before each meeting. And as well as if you're going to have to go back to health department to maybe do some sort of septic upgrade, that changes the application some more. So I think it's best to kind of, we can continue to a date certain in like 2 months or something. If that, I don't know how long you think you'll need to get kind of all the ducks in the row, if you will, with your legal counsel.
Okay, I'm planning to meet with him the beginning of next week, assuming there are no significant changes, and it's just a change of how we approach the board. We're planning to, I will apply and try and get on, the soonest board meeting. The engineer for the project is working currently on what is going to be required, through the health agent in terms of, it's probably going to be a modification of my existing Title V. And it may require an additional tank in front of my existing septic tank on my front lawn, but, no significant.
so Nikki, in your view, could we vote today if this were not even in front of zoning?
Because the septic thing is new, so I haven't really processed that fully, but I think the best thing, again, would be just to continue this to the 24th, to see if, so he doesn't, if he has to have a new tank and it's in the flood zone, he's going to have to submit a new RDA if we approve this one today. So
Right.
maybe give him a little time to meet with council, figure out the health department aspect. So continue this to May 24th. That way he doesn't have to reapply. And if it becomes, a completely different project and he withdraws from us for the RDA and needs an NOI or something like that, we can deal with it then.
Right,
But
right.
I think it's just a little early I feel like it's going to save us paperwork and having, multiple RDAs for the same project. If we just continue it for now, give him time to get organized with his council.
I agree with that. Really, we should be the last stop.
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me, when I started this project. It would have been nice to have, I didn't realize zoning board was necessarily the first step. I knew that we were gonna have to, address the septic and conservation and zoning board, but
It's
now
usually,
it's a little clearer to me that.
it's usually those bodies that would reject something. We usually just modify the application to meet wetlands requirements. So we should be the last stop, I think, in most cases, and I think we should be the last stop in this case.
Okay. Duly noted.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna continue to the 24th.
I'll make a motion that we continue 57 Diane Drive to May 24th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
I vote aye. See you then.
Okay, thank you for your time.
We're just now done with the ordinance.
All right, now we are on to the notices of intent. The first one is 72 Happy Valley Road, Mark Hunt, map 60, parcel 27A, 19A. Raise existing single-family dwelling and construction of a new single-family dwelling.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. For the record, Scott Bernard with Grady Consulting, here on behalf of the applicant, Mark Hunt. Do you mind if I share my screen, or if Nicole, if you could bring the plan up on the screen?
Either one, whichever you prefer.
Okay.
I do want to, before you start, there was, a number of us took note of the fact that the property wasn't staked. Is this the right one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's problematic, especially since the project area is in the no disturb zone. It was difficult to figure out where the dwelling itself would be in the no disturb zone itself. So I don't know if you knew that it needed to be staked, or whether you thought it had been staked, or whatever. But I wanted to note that.
Sure.
And so I think we're going to have to continue this one way or another, just so that you have that in your mind.
Yep.
So with that, go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay. Sure, yeah, I understand. I also saw that DEP has yet to issue a number for this project, so
Okay.
we expected a continuation
All right.
in any event. Okay, so this is a single-family residential property. It's pretty unique. There's Happy Valley Road, which is more or less a private road. There's no defined roadway through there. The ownership actually goes through the road. There is a water easement which is defined, but no actual road. There's a bordering vegetated wetland to the northeast of the property, a BBW, and a perennial stream to the east of the property. What's existing is a single-family dwelling with on-site septic and a treehouse, a deck, etc. What we're proposing to do is to raise all of the existing structures and construct a new single-family dwelling. The existing structures, they are all located within 100 feet to the BBW, and they're all located within the 100-foot riverfront setback. So we are seeking a variance for this work here in order to mitigate this additional work. We are making some significant improvements to the property. We will be proposing a brand new septic system. As part of that, there will be a denitrification system included, which limits the total nitrogen to 19 milligrams per liter. That application is with the Board of Health right now. We are also proposing a couple of dry wells on site, and those are really to attenuate the stormwater runoff, which will be resulting from the increase in impervious coverage of the building. During construction, we'll be installing a silt sock to mitigate any stormwater runoff, erosion, etc. We're also proposing a significant amount of planting mitigation. I believe the required mitigation for this property is 1,300 square feet, or 1,350. So we're proposing it to come in at 1,800, which is a 33% increase than what is required. A few other kind of minor things to note is there are a few gravel parking areas along the site here. So we'll be removing those, just have one single gravel driveway. So we believe this will be a significant increase to the property here. I understand that there were some comments that came back from the zoning department. I'll just touch on those briefly. Essentially, there's some debate on whether or not Happy Valley Road is a defined roadway. If so, we would need to maintain a 25-foot setback to that road. We do not believe that to be the case. So the setback will be to the front property line, which we are adhering to. Additionally, the floodplain to the rear of the property, by the zoning definition, it's considered coastal, although this is not a coastal site. The coastal setback, the coastal wetland setback is 50 feet, whereas an inland wetland setback is 25 feet. So right now, the deck is slightly within that area. So we may be visiting some modifications to that rear deck size and or location to get it outside of the 50-foot. Or we will be seeking a special permit with the zoning board, which is something that, you know, would likely to be approved here, since the existing deck is much closer than what we are proposing. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. I have several that I just want to get out there. And it mostly has to do with mitigation. First of all, your coverage table says you're adding 339 to the NDZ and a net gain of 725 to the outer aura and 1,802 of mitigation. However, that adds up to me to be 2,031 because you have to double what you have in the NDZ. But your narrative says you're adding 678 to the NDZ, 675 to the outer aura, for a total of 1,802. So there's a discrepancy between your coverage table and your narrative, which you need to look at and figure out. The other issue, another issue is that you refer to the 100-foot river front buffer, but it's really 200 feet, just FYI.
Yep.
The other issue, another issue is you're taking out at least 2 large trees with no trees being replaced, as best I can tell. And that's not something we would normally approve. The other issue, and probably the biggest issue for me, is that if you're looking at 1,800 square feet of mitigation, you are proposing, I'm sorry, let me get the number right. You're proposing mitigation of 8 blueberry bushes and 1,802 square feet of wildlife mix. To me, that's
Yes.
An inadequate mitigation plan, no matter how you slice it. So when and if you come back to us, I urge you, I don't, do I see the word landscaping in the title of your firm?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know how much experience you have with mitigation plantings, but, and I don't think we've ever seen you here before. I think you're not on, you don't work on Cape normally. But that's just completely insufficient in terms of diversity of plantings. Wildlife mix is just essentially throwing seeds onto the ground. So it attracts pollinators, provides no habitat value, and it's just not adequate in terms of mitigation. You need a variety of plants there. You need canopy, you need shrubs, you need low-level plants. It just needs to be done by someone who is used to providing a mitigation plan or a restoration plan.
Sure, we can certainly look into that and add more variety there. I would just like to note that to the north of where that planting is, there is already a walking path. You know, so there existed to some degree a disturbance between where this
There
plantings
is,
will be
and on that
wetland area.
note, between the front of the house and the wetland, there's no information in terms of what will be there. Is there a lawn there? What is it? And it doesn't talk about it. All it talks about is that green part, which I assume is the mitigation area, even though it doesn't really, there's no label for it. But I just made the assumption that's what you're talking about when you talk about mitigation. So a whole lot of clarity needs to be provided in terms of the mitigation plan, and not only just what's in the mitigation area per se, but also what is in the resource areas. You know, the no disturb, in other words, what will be left in the no disturb zone on the whole property, and what will be left in terms of vegetation in the outer aura on the whole property. So we need that sort of specificity.
Okay.
And especially, and including foundation plants to the house. We need to know what those are. And if they're in the NDZ, those need to be street native plants and so forth. Also, I believe that you need, I understand that you need approval from historic.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
you need approval from zoning, and you need approval from Board of Health. So I suggest that, you know, we don't look at this too much more deeply, especially since we're short on time, because you have a lot of things to get approvals for before I think you come to us, because who knows what sort of changes they're going to apply. especially if zoning, changes the setback.
Sure, so if I could just speak to a couple of those points there.
Sure, go ahead.
So the Board of Health application that has been submitted, we actually have a hearing coming up. The submittal to zoning that may or may not be required based on our discussions here. Like I said, to the
Well,
rear of the property.
that's to be determined. So we know that you need a lot of other approvals. And what I suggest is we'll get some more comments here from the rest of the commission. But I suggest we keep them at a high level because, as I've said before with other applications, we really should be toward the end of the line. To start out with conservation, when you have this many approvals that you need, I think is just a waste of time. All right, anybody else? You, Bob?
I think you hit it. The mitigation was a huge concern for me, but also the fact that it's not staked. It was hard to imagine, besides seeing it on paper, what this is truly going to look like compared to where that dirt road is and where everything else is. So, I walked around the property, but it's hard to tell what's affected.
Yeah, I mean, I have a basic question, is Bucks Creek considered, should it be 200 feet? Isn't that a river?
Yes,
200
Okay.
feet from a river.
So, so the whole property
Oh, yeah,
he's within the.
is within
riverfront, yeah.
the riverfront.
Yes.
So, it needs a lot more information before we can.
I have a problem with increasing the coverage by 339 feet in the no disturb zone. When there appears from the site plan to be adequate room behind that no disturb zone that's not being utilized, areas where the existing dwelling is, and then further to the, I'm not sure which direction we're going there, but, further to the right, maybe the east, west, but there's a lot of area there that would seem to be available to build the house of the square footage that you're seeking without an incursion into a no disturb zone. So I would hope that your variance request would speak to that in terms of whether the alternatives of building outside the no disturb zone are feasible or not.
I agree with that comment. I actually had it in my notes as well.
Yeah, I had the same concern. That area is ripe with wildlife, and I'd hate to see you build a house closer to the natural area by the water and by the woods. Also, the treehouse, would that be coming out?
Yes, it will.
Okay, maybe put a note on the plan as to how that's gonna happen, or just to make a note of it anyway.
It's on there.
It's on there? Okay.
It does note that the tree house is coming out, but if there's a tree house, there's a tree that's also coming out, because that's in the middle of the proposed garage. So we're also talking about how many trees will be removed from the property to do this planned structure.
And the mitigation for those trees, where are the new trees
Exactly.
going?
Yeah, because when trees are removed, we ask that trees be replaced somewhere else.
Okay.
Right, anyone else? I would urge you to look at, I don't know if you did look at, but there are, you should address the performance standards for the Wetlands Protection Act as well as the Chatham Wetlands Regulations Performance Standards. So you have to actually address both of those.
Right, those were submitted,
Okay.
as well as a variance request,
Saw
as
the
well
variance.
as an alternative analysis for the
Yes.
200-foot riverfront area.
I acknowledge that
Okay.
those were there, yeah.
I just want to make sure, because it seems like people on the board think that we overlooked some of these things, but we realize that there is a 200-foot riverfront area to the perennial stream. I do understand that there are staking requirements. I guess there might have been some miscommunication between Paul and I. I brought this to him before we submitted it, and my understanding was that we would be contacted when there was going to be a site walk conducted, and we can go out there and stake everything and meet on site. So that was probably just a miscommunication on our end, so I do apologize for that. We will certainly go out there and stake this work. We will also look at moving some of this work outside of the NDZ, and we'll be coming back before the board.
Right, and
So just on staking, just for clarification, I believe most of the commissioners go out sometime between Friday and Monday-ish. So it would have to be staked by, we would say Thursday, I think would work for everybody, just for clarification.
Okay.
but I think the important thing for me at least, to focus on is the mitigation plan. It needs a great deal of upgrade.
Sure.
Yes.
We can certainly address that.
All right, anything else? So we will have another crack at this, but so the question now is when to continue this to, because if we want these other approvals to come in, how much time, Nikki, do you have thoughts on how far in the future we should continue this to?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you have the other, so you're waiting for zoning about the setback issue. Do you have you gotten any guidance on when you might hear back about that? Whether you have to file with them or not?
So whether or not we have to file with them, I think is dependent on if we make any adjustments to this building here with this building footprint. We're very close to the setbacks, so we could make some minor changes and avoid filing with them altogether. So we don't have any active applications with the zoning board. We do have an active application with the Board of Health. I was really looking for input today on relative to the size and location of the house. If the commission was generally accepting of the size and location, then we would likely be going to the zoning board. If there was great opposition, we might, consider making some modifications, which would then, make us not have to go to the zoning board, if you will.
Well, I think you heard us, several of us opine about, we think there's too much increase in coverage in the NDZ.
Sure.
So I'm thinking the first one in June. I don't know if.
So it looks like you have, the 10th and then the 24th of this month? If we could do the,
Also, I'm sorry, do you need historic? I understood from the letter that I saw this morning that you also need historic. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but.
yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's going to take a while?
Should we even be hearing it until
I-
you come back from
I
his?
don't think so. I think we should push it out pretty far, and then if we have to continue it from then, we continue it from then.
That's why I was kind of thinking June. I didn't think it would, I mean, I know we're not going to get the answers we need for next meeting. Probably not for the last one in May. So my thought was June, the first one in June, which is the 7th. And if they don't have information, we can, continue again, or we can decide if we want to hear anything.
Right, okay.
Okay.
A motion that we
June
continue 72 Happy Valley Road to June 7th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Sharon.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
And I vote aye. See you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next notice of intent is 0 Davids Lane, Chatham Conservation Foundation, map 10A, parcel 2A. Lush cut previously pruned trees in the view easement area and restore the management area with native shrubs that will not include maintenance to maintain views.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flex Design here on behalf of the applicant, Dan Brickman, and the property owner, Chatham Conservation Foundation. I'm not sure, Julie Baca may be in the audience. I'm working from home today, so I'm joining you remotely. You may recall that we first presented this project to you as a request for determination of applicability back in December. At that time, we were proposing to flush cut the 4 cherries and 14 oak trees that have been flagged in the field and allowing them to regenerate. If you recall, Mr. Brickman has a view easement, a deeded view easement over the Chatham Conservation Foundation property, and he has been allowed to maintain those trees at a height of 6 to 8 feet in the past. Because of chopping and other pruning practices, those trees are no longer able to be maintained at that height while also maintaining the health of the tree. So we propose to flush cut and allow those trees to regenerate. At that hearing, the commission expressed some concerns about continued disturbance within the no disturb zone. And after discussion with Chatham Conservation Foundation, we proposed to return with a notice of intent application to flush cut and remove those trees, and then to plant the Vista Corridor area with native shrubs that would be allowed to reach mature fruiting size without the need for continued disturbance to maintain the desired view easement. So we're bringing this notice of intent before you today with exactly that. So we are proposing in this notice to remove the previously topped cherry trees and oak trees, to plant 54 native shrubs in the area where the trees are to be removed. In addition to that, we're proposing to plant 6 oak trees at a very small size, a 3-gallon container, 2 3-gallon container size, in the area just to the north of the view corridor that we're showing on the plan before you. The view corridor that's being shown on the plan before you is the historically maintained view corridor. So the trees that have all been flagged in the field are located within that area. We do want to note that that is not the full extent of the view easement that is applied to this property through the deed restriction for Vista management. However, it is the view corridor that has been historically managed, and that is the area that we're proposing to manage with this notice of intent filing. I think this is pretty straightforward. I did also submit a variance request because this work is taking place within the 50-foot buffer zone to the coastal bank, which is a coastal bank that provides protection from floodwaters. It is not a sediment source. It's a fairly inland coastal bank, as a matter of fact. So with that, the alternatives that we're proposing would be to either go forward with the flush cutting and allowing those trees to regenerate, which the commission expressed that they did not prefer, or to not maintain the view easement, which neither Mr. Brickman, who has the view easement, nor the Chatham Conservation Foundation are in favor of. The Chatham Conservation Foundation has allowed Mr. Brickman to manage this easement for a number of years and continues to want to do so. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed plan.
Thank you,
I'll leave it
Teresa.
at that. Thanks.
Open it up. Anyone wants to start?
I think it's a nice solution, given that you're putting 54 shrubs that won't need to be maintained. And then the only question is, how often or how soon will these small oaks that are planted start needing to be dealt with?
Those oaks are going outside of the managed view corridor in an area where there's currently some trees. So our proposal to plant them at a small size would be to be planting for succession. So in the area where we're proposing to plant the 4 scarlet oak and 2 white oak trees, there are other mature canopy trees in around that area. So these trees would be planted sort of as a future insurance plan. As the other trees mature and start to decline, these trees would be able to grow up and take their place.
And they're not part of any of the area that, I know you said he maintains this view corridor, but that the area was larger than that, I thought you said?
Yeah, well, the deeded view easement is a much larger area, but this is the area that's been historically maintained. And Mr. Brickman has no intention of maintaining anything outside of that. It doesn't really provide him any additional views in that area. And we've worked with Mr. Brickman and Chatham Conservation Foundation and done an extensive restoration in that area where we removed invasive vegetation and have already planted a number of trees. So we're just proposing to plant some more oak trees in there, again, just to mitigate for loss of biomass and loss of habitat value with the oak trees, which we know are highly valued.
As long as he doesn't want to maintain it ever, I think this is a nice solution. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Just for context, I just want to note that the view easement that exists between the Chatham Conservation Foundation and Mr. Brickman is a private agreement between two private parties to allow maintenance of a view over the property that is owned by the foundation. And the area that's referred to on the plan is the area that has historically been trimmed. There's no evidence that the Conservation Commission ever approved a view corridor in that area or approved topping of the trees in that area. So I haven't found anything that indicates. So this notice of intent serves as a request, essentially, to establish a view corridor in accordance with the way that we do that. Because of past practices, the trees are no longer viable, which is unfortunate. But I guess I wonder, with all of that as context, because I think it's important to remember that the view easement and a view corridor that we approve are very different things. So the trees that are proposed for removal to be flush cut are not identified on any of the plans.
So they have not been located. I did flag them in the field. I do
Yep.
want to just make one correction to that. So we did have approval from the Chatham Conservation Commission to manage those trees at that 6 to 8 foot height. So we have had previous approval. There's a long history on this project. So there was a violation where some things were cut and removed, et cetera. We put together a restoration plan, and in that restoration plan, we did have approval through the Conservation Commission and Foundation to manage those trees at that 6 to 8 foot height. However, there was never a formalized view corridor put on the plan, so we're correcting that today by establishing this view corridor on this plan with this notice of intent filing. So we did have permission to manage those trees through both the CCF and Chatham Conservation Commission, but there was never a formalized view corridor. So that's what we're doing at this point.
Okay.
The trees themselves are not physically located on a site plan. We've had site plans completed by Clark Engineering, this site plan by East Southeast. But none of them have gone out and located because there are a significant number of trees around this area that we're showing in yellow for management. And all of those trees have not been located previously. So I did flag all of the previously cut trees in the field so that the commission could view them.
Okay, I'd be curious, and maybe Nikki can help us here, because the order of conditions that I found that I believe was what was resolving some of the violations on the site, I did not see anything. I looked in there specifically for approval by the Conservation Commission of the view management of the cutting of those trees. So, Nikki, if we have something, that would make me feel a lot better. If I could get my hands on that, just to know that we have that in the record, because it's
I can't say for sure right off the top of my head because I don't have my, the whole filing system in front of me. But I can look into that, yes.
Yeah, because I did some searching through the digital files and found a previous order of conditions from I don't know, 2016 or something, 2014. There was a violation in 2012. It was settled by a restoration plan in 2014 that the Conservation Commission did approve, but that's the document that I couldn't find, and maybe I'm just missing it, the reference to approval of the maintenance of the trees at the 6 to 8 foot height. So just need to see that, because I didn't see a view corridor, any reference to that.
So I think I can clarify. So the original, this was in a plan from 2011, 2012, and that's when the violation occurred. And that was handled through an enforcement order. A notice of intent was not required at the time. It was all handled through enforcement. So there is a land management plan from 2011 on record, and I have copies of that I can certainly get for you if you'd like. And that's where the management of those trees. Then there was a notice of intent filed in 2014 to do a restoration to the area to the north. So there's a separate restoration plan that was filed for a violation through an enforcement order. And then after that, there was a restoration plan filed in 2014, a voluntary restoration plan to do invasive species management and restore the CCF property that's located to the north of where we're seeing the view corridor on this plan.
Right, so that's the area where one of the two meadows that you created is part of that. So I think what we're missing here is the land management plan from 2012 that would have the approval of the commission for the cutting. All right,
Yes,
so
I
hopefully
can-
that's just administrative detail that we can
Yes.
Yeah,
fulfill.
so usually Crystal puts the, any past filings on the cover of the new filings so that I can reference them, to see that, things match and that kind of stuff. But because this is a 0 address, it may have gotten, the zeros kind of get lost, if you will.
Yep.
So we will look further into that.
Okay. And just following up, Teresa, on your note about the trees and how densely treed this area is that the rationale for replacing 18 trees removed with shrubs rather than the sprinkling of the new trees that are shown? Because there's already sufficient
There is sufficient canopy throughout this area. There's a mix of oak, cherry, eastern red, cedar. There was some white poplar that was removed as part of the restoration plan. So it's really well, the site is really well vegetated. I think based on, so our previous application with the request for determination of applicability was to allow us to flush cut and have these trees regenerate so that we could just continue to manage them at that 6 to 8 foot height range. But after discussion with the commission, there was a concern about continued disturbance and the fact that once these trees, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll be coming back to you asking to flush cut them again because we can no longer maintain a tree that wants to be 60 feet tall at 6 feet. It just doesn't make sense. So at that time, at the December 14th hearing, we had discussed coming back with a plan that would allow us to maintain that vista, that view that had been historically maintained through pruning, but maintain it by removing those trees, planting a diverse mix of shrubs that would just be allowed to grow and reach mature fruiting size that would not need any further disturbance in order to maintain. So it's really just an idea of allowing that view corridor to be maintained, but doing it without having to go in there and cut something every year and then flush cut something every 10 years.
Right, appreciate that. But I did notice that in the prior filing, you did say that these particular species will resprout quite quickly. So if you're flush cutting them now and there's no intent to have anything regenerate, does that create a maintenance issue to make sure that they are kept free from any sprouts?
We will be, when we flush cut these trees, we will be treating them with a systemic herbicide so that they do not regenerate.
Oh, okay, no, okay, that solves that problem, although it's painful to hear.
I know, I completely understand, which is why we came before the commission with the first recommendation to flush cut and allow to regenerate. But I understood the commission's concerns about long-term management and the long-term damage.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Teresa, how are you?
Good, Bob, how are you?
Good. So these new shrubs, they're going to be going forward of those cut trees?
They'll be
Flush-cut
going
trees?
in and amongst, yeah, so the trees that we'll be flush cutting the trees, treating them, roots will remain in place, they'll be allowed to naturally biodegrade, and then we'll be planting these shrubs in and amongst those root systems and stumps. So they'll be filling that area where the trees are currently located.
Okay, there's some white poplar, you mentioned that before. I saw some small white poplar trees in that mix, and those are going to be removed as well?
They will. We'll cut those and treat those. We've been doing management, just follow-up management, because there's a significant amount of white poplar just off property to the north that continue to sucker in on 300 Stage Neck Road property. I believe it's that address. So we do have to do follow-up management throughout this area and maintain the restoration.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? I have one question, Teresa, and that is, between the applicant's house and this area that's being replaced with shrubs, are there also trees in that area that would eventually sprout up to be in the view?
No, that area is actually managed as meadow. So part of the restoration for the original violation back in 2011 was that area was restored as meadow. That's mown, and we mow it annually.
Okay.
There are some shrubs in there, but we do an annual mowing of the meadow.
Okay, so there should not ever be, if this gets approved and implemented, ever any need to prune
That is correct.
Cut
That's the goal of this.
anywhere
Yes.
for the view that
yes.
is being used, okay.
Correct.
And I did want to mention that I asked CCF to make sure they knew about this, and they wrote back saying, yeah, yes, we're aware, we've looked over the new plans, are satisfied with the added mitigation of planting a few oaks outside the view easement. The actual view easement where we have to permit vegetation management is much wider than the area of work proposed in this application. Current work limit was negotiated at a number of on-site visits with Teresa and Dan. So they're fully aware, CCF is fully aware and in agreement with it. I think it was alluded to a while ago, but I guess what I'm gathering is that even though you're not replacing trees one-to-one, you're saying that where trees could be put, there's really no more room for more trees to be planted to make up for the trees being cut.
Right. There definitely, there's a lot of canopy around, so we're putting the 6 additional trees in an area where there is existing canopy, again, with the idea of just planning for succession. There certainly, our goal was to try and provide a number of shrubs that we felt would offset the loss of biomass from the trees that are currently existing that are proposed for removal. We are proposing we did work with CCF. They had some concerns about watering and about predation. So we are proposing, if we see signs of predation, to use predator excluders until the roots get established and the shrubs are able to withstand regular browsing by deer and rabbit, which are the 2 main issues out in this area. So I did work with Chatham Conservation Foundation for quite some time, hence the gap in the time we did the original RDA application and then this proposed notice of intent filing.
All right.
Yeah.
Understood. All right, thank you. So, any conditions? I guess we accept it without any additional issues. Have we identified any additional issues that we want to put in there? Didn't sound like it to me. Yeah, okay.
Just all the usual conditions.
The usual conditions, yeah.
That go with view easements, view corridors.
Corridors, yes.
Yes,
All right.
maintenance, yep.
So, continue, when do we continue for orders and conditions?
It sounds like this one can go to the 10th, I believe.
Next week? Okay,
Yep.
all right. That would be the May 10th.
I'll make a motion that we continue 0 David's Lane to May 10th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I will dig up the 2011 plan from the archives and send that over to Nikki and Crystal.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next notice of intent is for 85 Mill Pond Road, Robert Duncanson, PhD, Town of Chatham, map 15C, parcel 085, pumping station upgrade.
Afternoon, members of the commission. Back before you again with another wastewater pump station. However, the big difference with this one is this is an upgrade of an existing pump station. I'm sure you're probably all familiar with this one, located practically in Little Mill Pond, right at the intersection of Homestead Lane and Mill Pond Lane. That pump station was originally constructed in 1969, 1970 as part of the original collection system for the town. It's in need of upgrade, and because of that, obviously, we have to bring it up to today's standards. It is within the floodplain, obviously, being only feet away from the high tide line, and I have pictures in previous storm events of water surrounding the existing pump station, as well as flooding the intersection of the road there and the town pier as well. So we are proposing to upgrade the station with a new building that will basically be 2 stories or a story and a half, if you will, above the existing station. The bottom portion will be flood-proofed. The upper portion will house the emergency generator, the controls, all the electrical panels and whatnot to get them above the floodplain. We are working with the property owner immediately adjacent to get an easement because obviously we have to make the station a little bit bigger to house all the modern amenities and whatnot that are required. So we're working with them right now to get the easement. It's not a huge easement, but we do need to expand the size of the station. We're leaving the existing wet well in place. So, we're kind of locked into it, if you will, by leaving the existing wet well in place and continuing to utilize that. We don't have an option to really move the station anywhere else. It's at the low point. So we've worked and made the new building and all work around the existing wet well. And basically what you see there today, and we had everything staked, but what you see there today with the concrete, or not the concrete, but the stone wall that's around the existing station, that will basically be the seaward limit, if you will, of the new station, and then we'll go back into the embankment behind that and use the back wall of the new station as a retaining wall. So to minimize the site, disturbance and the impact on the private property that's immediately adjacent. So Nikki has put up a photograph of what the existing station looks like. I'm sure you've all seen it, if not recently, over the years. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Obviously the new station's going to be a little bit bigger in footprint than the existing one. At this site, there really is no room for any mitigation because, we're in the resource area. But if the commission, is looking for additional mitigation other than, the continued improvement, water quality improvement from expanding the town sewer system, we can, just like we did for some of the other pump stations, we will look for mitigation at other locations on public property in town. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And we also have Jeff Gregg on the line, our engineer from GHD as well, if there's any more technical questions, if you will.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Bob, just so you know, I had someone in the area that's looking to purchase a house and kind of wanted to know some more details. And I told them to listen in. So they wanted more details on privacy and what it's going to look like from, say their upstairs window or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I believe because the house across the street on the other side of Homestead Lane is currently for sale.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nikki, could you put up the, it's what I think of as the planning plan. It's in the middle of the, if you're looking at the two-part documents on Dropbox, it's sort of halfway down the first one.
The
Oh, not the second one, I mean,
Landscaping plans.
landscaping plan.
Conceptual landscape plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That plan is conceptual. As I said, we are working with the property owner on what the specifics of the, what kind of landscaping they want to see. We proposed, what is before you was proposed by the town and the engineers to kind of screen it as much as we can from the site, looking from their property. But we will be having discussions with the property owners about what specific plants or changes they might want to
right.
propose. Obviously, being a town project, my goal is always we use native plants.
Yeah, and the
So-
plants that are proposed there are native.
Yep.
So this is really, I didn't know that was to be viewed as a conceptual plan, but that's fine. That's why there's a discrepancy between the plant list and the little icons on the,
Yeah. Yeah, it may change based on our conversations with you,
yeah.
with the
But you don't
abutters.
consider this to be mitigation, even though those are all native plants being planted right next to.
I wouldn't consider, I mean, I wouldn't consider mitigation for mitigation. It's mitigation because we have a pump station that is going to get bigger, and we have to take some of the existing vegetation out to make it work, and we want to screen it from the abutter.
Yeah, but,
Yeah,
I mean, if it walks like mitigation and talks like mitigation, I think it's mitigation, so.
yeah. I mean, we would be doing this landscaping whether we had mitigation requirement or not.
Well, that's fine.
So, yeah. I mean, if
I
the
think you should
commission,
consider it mitigation.
if the commission's willing to consider it as mitigation, great, it works for all of us.
I just, okay, Janet may disagree, but I was just curious why you didn't call it mitigation, that's all. Because
It's restoring the impacted area.
it's restoration, not, okay, all right,
Yeah.
all right. One more question.
Yeah.
This is sewage pump station?
Yes.
I didn't know that we had sewers that long ago.
Yes, the original town of Chatham sewer system was installed in 1969, 1970.
Really?
And it served primarily the downtown Main Street area from, this area, this pump station was the eastern extent, if you will. And then it went from there down Main Street to the Rotary, Cross Street, and that area.
Oh.
But yeah, that was the original planning document is 1966.
Okay,
Dense, yes.
questions from anybody?
So has this station ever failed in any way? Has it ever resulted in any,
It has not resulted in any flow into Little Mill Pond that I am aware of. The technology that was chosen for this station was specifically chosen back in the 60s because of its location. And at the time, it was kind of state-of-the-art, to alleviate those concerns. So I'm not aware that there's ever been a spill, and in all the years I've been here, there's never been a spill that's reached the pond. And I don't believe, in talking to the operators when I first came here, that there were ever any issues.
I'm glad to hear that. I think we all would have heard about it if there were.
Yeah.
But I guess where I'm going with this is that is the components that are remaining in place at 60 years old posing any risk of failure?
No, pretty much the only thing that's really remaining in place is the concrete wet well, which is that big cylinder that goes into the ground into which the sewage flows. Pretty much everything else is coming out and being updated and replaced with modern equipment.
Okay,
And, that concrete cylinder it's still in pretty good shape.
okay.
Those kinds of things just not designed to last for 100 years, so it's still got some life left into it.
Okay, and I know that stormwater runoff in this area has been a bit of a challenge and a problem. So I noticed the installation of what's referred to as stormwater systems
Yep.
to prevent any water from getting into Mill Pond, and I'm looking for a layperson's reasonable description of what those systems are and how they will operate to prevent stormwater getting into the pond.
They're basically leaching catch basins that will capture the stormwater. It's a difficult location, obviously, because pavement pretty much goes down right to the pond. And we actually tried to get a grant from the state about 20 years ago to deal with that mitigation or deal with that stormwater issue. And they wouldn't give us the grant because they said, well, Little Mill Pond's open to shellfishing. And I said, well, yeah, our goal is to keep it open to shellfishing. And they said, oh, no, we only give out grants when an area is closed and we can reopen it. I was like, okay, kind of short-sighted, but whatever. And it had to do with the public notice and the kudos to various agencies and executives in the state get for reopening closed areas. So we've looked at this area a couple times, and it's a tough area. So we're proposing to put some drainage on the road where we have some elevation to groundwater. So there's still going to be a small area at the very end that we're not going to be able to pick up just because there's, we're right in the pond already. There's no depth to groundwater. And so far, knock on composite wood, Little Mill Pond has remained open to shellfishing in spite of the situation. So we're going to improve on it as much as we can. It won't be 100%, but it'll be in the 80% range, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
And we're also talking with, so GHD had designed this, we actually had a study a number of years ago that came up with some stormwater solutions. GHD refined that as part of this project, because originally it was going to be a separate stormwater project. And right now, we're actually working with USDA, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, as part of the Cape Cod Water Resource Restoration Project, where stormwater is one of their projects that they may be working with us. They'll review the design, give us any appropriate suggestions, as well as fund the design, fund the construction, very similar to what we did as part of the sewer project down on Oyster Pond Furlong, where we worked with NRCS and we put some stormwater improvements there as long as we had the road all ripped up. So it's another one of those cooperative projects that's working out for everybody.
So, the leaching catch basins will intercept the stormwater, and how far down do they go? And they deliver it into the groundwater beneath?
Yeah.
How far down is groundwater at that point?
Jeff, do you want to touch base on depth of groundwater? We did some test borings along the road. I don't recall offhand how far it was.
I have to find I don't think we submitted the full set, so just trying to open the drawings.
I mean, our goal is always to try to get at least a foot. With a septic system, you want 4 feet to groundwater.
Yeah.
Stormwater, you can be less. My goal is always to try to get at least a foot, so you get a little bit more natural treatment.
Right.
So that's kind of our minimum.
So if I can share my screen, maybe. Let's see if this works. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, good, that's it.
So the two systems that we were talking about are up on the hill. And groundwater, if I'm not mistaken, is right here at 2.5. So this one is basically just at groundwater. That was the best we could do in terms of trying to keep it above. And this one is probably, let's see, 5. That one might actually be about 10 feet above groundwater.
Yeah.
Or a little bit more based on the blocks here. So you can see groundwater is really shallow. So it's the real struggle. We couldn't do anything right at the station, and the station's right here.
Right,
Just so you have some context of where we are.
right.
And then I know the town was also seeking, through another project, the possibility of getting an easement off of Homestead, but we hadn't finished that. So we have something potentially designed there, but that's not part of this project.
So what is your estimate of the percentage of runoff that these two stations will capture?
Oh, I'd have to go back and look at the,
Well, we're talking about basically only the runoff that's below
Right.
Station 2,
Yeah.
right? So that's
Yeah,
the only,
so-
that's what's going to be headed to Mill Pond. Okay.
so I think we're we were looking at less than, I think it was like a half-inch storm or something like that. It was like either the first flush is really what we were trying to capture to get,
Right.
you know, nutrients and anything else that's coming off the surface. We really couldn't address any substantial storm size based on the depth of groundwater and the limited road layout.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
And I think there was a question too about, in general, what the station would look like, and I can, Bob, if you want, I can, if you guys
Yeah.
can see that, that's generally, it's a rendering. It's not gonna look exactly like this, but this gives you an idea. So in this perspective, Mill Pond runs up here, so it'll be up off the driveway. So I know it's spun, but, so the water would be either over here off the front, or over here. This, you can see, kind of mimics what that existing picture looked like. So the intent was to stay basically in the footprint and try to work our way backwards.
All right, thank you.
It does.
Dr. Bob, the sycamore maples on the north side, probably with that easement, you're trying to get that easement, those are going to be removed, all those trees?
We don't particularly know yet. Once everything gets laid out and the contractor comes in, chances are there's going to be a fairly significant impact on the roots. Our goal is to try to save them, but it's really going to be a question of how much disturbance is there potentially going to be when they try to get that back wall in.
Okay,
you know, and I think-
they are invasive.
Yeah, but they're a great screen for that location.
Right.
They fit in really well. They've been there forever.
Yeah,
So our goal is to retain them. Yeah.
okay. And the new plants that you'll be planting, how will they be cared for?
Well, most of them will be native, so hopefully they require minimal care. But we would, in terms of watering to get them established and things like that, we would have that done as part of it. The contractor would be responsible probably for 2 growing seasons, which is pretty standard. But we have staff that are down there every day, and if they see something, we'll have an outdoor water spigot that if we needed to. And I'm sure the property owners there will also be keeping an eye on things as well.
So you can water them directly from the pump station itself?
No, the pump station will have fresh water.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah, we won't be using wastewater.
Yeah, no.
No.
That would be better, more nutritious.
It's a great way to get rid of nutrients, absolutely, but not in this location.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? The only issue for me is the standard issue for these types of, and you already telegraphed it at the beginning, you're increasing by, coverage by 368, so in the NDZ, which is 2 times that of 736. And, I'm making the case for you that you're adding some mitigation there. I don't know how much, but if you calculated that,
Yeah, we can calculate that and provide it to the commission.
and whatever's left over, if you can add it to the other humongous piece that you're doing for the other pump stations,
Yeah.
wherever that happens to be,
Yeah,
then I think we come out, we balance the books, as I like to say.
yep, we can do that.
All right. Any other concerns, questions? None? All right. So this would also be to next week? Are we full, Nikki?
No, I think we're good. So we have David's Lane and this one, potentially 676 Orleans Road are all that's moving on.
Okay.
And the comprehensive dredge permit is also.
Oh, yeah, no, I just mean from this agenda.
Yeah.
I'm not
I'm just
exactly
counting it,
sure
so it's
what's on.
4 orders for next week so far, so that's all right.
Okay.
That's nothing.
That's nothing. Give us 12, then we'll.
All right. So for May 10th.
Yes.
Make a motion that we continue 85 Mill Pond Road to May 10th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Trying to figure out whether we have time for a break. We have,
So the next one is short. It's a withdrawal. I mean, we'll have a short discussion on it. I think I'm a little confused on what's happening with it. Then we have one more notice of intent. We already moved on from the COC, and then we have the order of conditions. So there's definitely time for a break.
yeah, okay. 7-minute break? Okay, we're back. So Nikki, if you're there. She's-
I am here.
Okay.
All right, so the next notice of intent is 61 Elephants.
Elephants. Wait a minute.
I am
How do you
so
pronounce
ready
it?
to have that road off our radar. Lane, Denise Ann Campbell and Mark Allen, map 16C, parcel 3614, SC 103619, replacement of the existing seawall. So they had the emergency order that was issued maybe in January, I think it was. And Bob Perry was going to come back to tie in basically to repair the wall and all that kind of stuff. But he sent me an email yesterday that he hasn't really been in contact with the homeowner. And I know so we had asked for additional information on the plan. So he has not updated his plan whatsoever. He's been having, I think, some difficulty getting in contact with the homeowner. And I know the homeowner and the next door neighbor don't see eye to eye, if you will. So he's asking to just withdraw his application. So, my recommendation is to allow him to withdraw his application, and I will get in touch with the homeowner to get the more specific information. I have a pretty good relationship with the Mark Allen, the homeowner, so I think I'll just get clarification from him on that, because they do need a notice of intent, but Bob Perry did say that the wall was in a sufficient state to, do its job. But now it's just, it's a
What-
complicated one. I didn't get this email until yesterday afternoon, so it wasn't really on, I was trying to finish other stuff up, so.
Okay. Well, what I recall, they basically, under the emergency order, they just leaned the broken concrete back up against the bank.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is that, I think it was Bob Perry. I don't want to say Bob Perry too many times without it actually being him, but,
It is, I believe, yeah.
okay, yeah, I thought so. So, yeah, he said it's sufficient to do its job for now, but we're not exactly following what an enforcement order, or not enforcement order, emergency certification, which would then require an NOI. So I just think there's something between the engineer and the homeowner something's not happening. So he had nothing else to present, so he asked to withdraw. So I'm going to get some sort of formal statement. I'm going to contact the homeowner first, and then get a formal statement that Bob Perry is no longer on this job, or if he is on this job, just try and figure out what's going on between the two of them, because I don't know anything, honestly.
Okay. Well, but under an emergency order, is there some sort of time frame by which the NOI has to be submitted? I mean,
It's usually 30 days unless you extend it.
so they're in violation of the emergency order?
That is a good question. Just 1 second.
Well, it doesn't matter. You obviously have to be talking to a number of people and try to untangle it, but it doesn't seem like it can just be withdrawn and then that's the end of it.
No, I mean, for sure, it cannot just be withdrawn, but Bob Perry does have the right to say, I'm not on this project
Oh, yeah,
anymore,
for sure.
and it's up to the homeowner. So that's why
Yeah.
and I just, like I said, I just got this email yesterday
Okay,
afternoon.
that's fine. So
So I haven't reached out to anyone yet to figure out what exactly is going on.
yeah,
Bob had mentioned that he was having some issues
Yeah,
with contact with the
that's fine.
homeowner, so.
but I'm just wondering whether you should have the conversations before I guess, withdrawn, I mean, could someone else take it over, for example?
Yeah, I mean, just trying to think of paper trail type stuff is
Yeah.
what
right.
I'm usually concerned with.
Okay,
is
well,
trying to
whatever,
make it as
whatever you can
clear.
figure out. Whatever you can figure out.
So, yeah, I mean, just let me, I mean, if we want, we can continue it to next week as just an agenda item. Not expecting new plans or anything like that, but just to keep it on the radar.
Yeah, that might be prudent, just in case you can get it resolved and back on track.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the best way to keep it on mine and Crystal and Paul's radar, is to continue things to a certain date, and then they don't get lost,
Yeah.
if you will.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we,
Nope, go ahead, sorry.
I'll make a motion that we continue 61 Elephants Lane to May 10th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
All right, and the next notice of intent is 676 Orleans Road, Kristen Dietrich, Riders Cove Dreams LLC, map 12J, parcel 5, raise the existing dwelling and redevelop property above the coastal bank.
Good afternoon. For the record, Thad Eldridge, here with Andrew Garley. I believe we had mostly everything resolved with the site itself, and we're here to talk about vegetation and mitigation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Hello, Andrew Garrelay, landscape architect, Yarmouth Port Design Group. I don't know if we want to get that plan on the screen, or?
Yeah, Nikki, can you do that?
There we go. So the issue the last time, there were a couple of things. One was I had varieties in my native plantings around the foundation of the house, and I have taken that away. They're all straight species now. Another question that was raised was whether we could put mitigation in if the buffer, if the existing buffer was a mess, if we could put mitigation into that. And went back and revisited that, and the mitigation is very good. It does have some invasives creeping in it, but it's as you can see, I marked it up with the existing beach plum is in there, a lot of Virginia, most of it's Virginia rose, and then we've got bayberry down below. I also used an instrument to locate the two trees that I believed were just off the property. One actually is just off the property. This is in the northeast corner, just outside the new mitigation near the existing beach plum. You'll see that one of those trees is actually on the lot, and that does have English ivy growing up on it. Chris Dietrich, the owner, has contacted Lindsay Stroud, who is going to do a management program for both taking care of the existing mitigation area from previous work from the previous owner, as well as maintaining and probably installing the proposed mitigation. I also rearranged a little bit the mitigation that I'm showing there. It's the same plants. I just rearranged them slightly because I realized I had some bigger things, things that grew a little bit bigger where there's more of a potential view. So I wanted to move those down lower on the slope and put the lower Countonia peregrina up in an area where I think it's better to have some lower shrubs per view so it doesn't become an issue down the road with pruning or anything like that. That's all that I can recall that was being asked.
Can anyone remember anything else? So the plants on in your planning schedule or table that are not green, in other words, they're black, those are the
Ornamentals.
ornamentals?
Yeah.
Okay, so it makes it easier. I didn't pick up on that at the beginning, but that makes it easier to figure out.
Yeah, I tried to color
going
key
on?
it, so the dark green is actual mitigation, the light green is natives within the foundation planting. So that's why there's two different colors of
I
green.
see, okay.
I didn't want you to think I was calculating the natives and the foundation as mitigation. Try to make it easy for you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so it looks to me like you did what we asked. You got rid of the varietals. It's pretty native at this point. And among the foundation plants, they seem to be concentrated, the non-natives, the ornamentals seem to be concentrated in the one side of the house, the away from the resource area side of the house, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, I tried to, for lack of a better term, put the ornamentals in the front side of the house that as it's being viewed from people arriving, so.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, questions, anybody, comments?
Andrew, you mentioned that Lindsay was going to do the plant management
Yeah,
long-term. Do you have anything from him?
I asked Chris if he could get something in writing from him and get it into you. Apparently, he did not get anything into you yet. But I had phone conversation with him, and we were exchanging, the three of us were exchanging emails, and I also had a phone conversation with Lindsay, because I actually asked him to have a look at this plan. If there was anything that, I was certainly open for anything that he thought would be helpful for him if he's going to do the long-term maintenance of it, if he wanted to change anything, which he did not specify any changes on that, so.
Is this going to be more than 3 years, or up till 3 years? Or?
Well, I would expect that with the notice of intent that you'd need something for the 3 years.
Minimum, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that also, and this is a question I kind of have, just a general question for you as well, is this previous mitigation, I can't remember what year that was from. I want to say like 2012, was it 2012?
Somewhere in there.
Somewhere around that time. So they did a nice mitigation job, and over the time, some of these invasives, it actually isn't that bad if it hasn't been maintained since 2015. But obviously, these things creep back in. So would they need to do, if it was a 3-year maintenance plan, would they need to come back to you and do a notice of intent to continue the maintenance on it? That's one of the difficulties is, well, that's the.
I'm going to let Janet handle this. She's ready.
Yeah,
She's
well,
ready.
that's the difficulty with the situation is if they're not supposed to mess with it and they don't mess with it and then the invasives come back.
We have an answer for you.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Especially where mitigation areas are bordering areas that include invasives, we have a standard condition now that that area will be monitored in perpetuity. And when invasives are identified as coming back in, they'll be removed immediately, so
Yep.
that keeps you guys employed
That's
forever.
good. That's good, yeah.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
That's very good.
Yeah, I think it solves a lot of problems.
Yes.
Like looking at 10-year-old mitigation and you can't even find it anymore, so.
Yeah, well, it's not, I think Bob mentioned to me outside here that he went back and took a look and realized it wasn't as bad as he originally had thought.
Yeah.
Because one of the species is Virginia rose, and at a quick glance, especially this, because it's very upright, a lot of times it's not as upright growing as it is here, because it's mature enough now, that it looks a little bit like the invasive multiflora.
northern Bayberry in that location instead of the Primus Martima.
I'm sorry, who's talking, please?
Why
Hello, hello? Is someone on an open line on on this hearing? Okay, thank you.
Something got crossed.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
So,
weird.
yeah. And lower down on the slope is, somebody was mentioning Bayberry. I don't know if they were commenting on this or not, but the lower half of that slope is northern Bayberry. Yeah.
All right.
Have you guys filed with ZBA yet?
No, we're still waiting on the attorney on that one, so
Okay.
we'll be filing with, the plans are to start construction in the fall anyhow, so you can schedule us whenever you want. And if we push this out a little bit, then we can, hopefully we get something back from Lindsay and we can submit that and review it if
Right.
necessary.
So you haven't applied, or you just?
We have not applied yet.
Okay. Yeah, I'm, at the end of this hearing, I have a motion to make. So we'll see how that goes. I think we should be at the end of the line in all cases. Okay, so other concerns about this revised plan, though? Okay.
And if I may, with the motion you want to make about
Okay.
being at the end of the line.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the zoning board of appeals is the one that's supposed to be at the end of the line,
Why is it supposed to be?
because they seek the guidance from everybody else.
Do they? I'm not sure.
In their 12 criteria that they have, there are specific sections from Board of Health, Conservation, Planning, and Historical that they need to address. So the way the system has always been set up was technically zoning is last.
And they won't let you file unless you've already filed with.
Correct.
Yeah.
They need the letters from all of the other boards, all of the other departments before they can
Well,
issue their
the
decisions.
the letters can consist of a statement that says we are willing to approve with conditions, but that's before we've actually written orders of conditions.
And I
So
can say, I've
are
had
you
this-
saying, so,
I've
okay,
had this
then this is,
conversation with previous commissions, and
Yeah.
and previous commissions have said, why aren't we last? And it's always been set up that technically the zoning board of appeals, it is the strongest board in town. They're semi-litigious, they're quasi-judicial, and they are technically the
I'm
last
glad you
one.
brought it up, and I'm going to follow up with that. I was unaware of the fact that they had, as you say, they have a checklist. Have we received approvals from all the other bodies? That's what you're saying?
No, they need the letters from all others.
Letters,
So
okay.
when your letter goes in and it says this project can be conditioned, that's
Yeah,
sufficient.
that's all they need.
Yes.
Right.
But they need you to see it before.
Before they do.
Before you can send that, it has to be, they won't let you schedule, am I correct? And
Oh,
they will not let you schedule a
they'll let you
hearing.
schedule, but they'll probably push it back. And the current chairman's not a great fan of continuing these. He's asking people to withdraw and resubmit. So it's,
Well, all right. Well, I still see this as an issue, and because, as I've said before, they may have their rules, but in practice, they kill things more than we do. And so we wind up doing a lot of work for projects that they kill. It's not particularly fair. We're kind of overworked as it is. So we need to, I want to try to figure it out. If they have rules, well, rules can always be changed.
So I just wrote down, because I write things down now, because I'm of that age, apparently, to get in touch with the in-office people of the different boards to kind of, because this has been an issue in every single town I've worked in, who goes first. So if we can get something that says a specific order, or just to meet with everybody to see why they want one person to go first versus the other. I mean, I obviously know why we want to be last, is because we don't want to waste time reviewing a plan if the house is going to move 30 feet any direction. So so I get our side. So I'm just going to put a note down that says meet with ZBA, health, building and ZBA are kind of synonymous in this case, and just try and figure out if we can do a solid, this is the timeline.
Yeah, it'd be good conversation to have, because we're getting bit on this too much.
Yeah, and I'll, so maybe I'll set that up first with like Dr. Duncanson and the town hall people, and then invite the chairs of the various committees. So maybe we can do like kind of some sort of group meeting.
Right. And just impress upon them that in practice, we don't really kill projects very often at all. I can count them on one hand.
No, we're often the ones that, you know,
We usually.
just make them revise the plans to a certain point that
That's correct,
they can be approved.
yeah. We don't have a rule that says, well, we just don't like it, so we're not going to permit it,
They apparently do.
like some boards do. All right, so anyway, where are we? We're,
Want to continue to a date in the future.
but but if you don't have zoning, how can we,
If you want to put us into June,
let's put him into June. June,
June 7th?
sure.
And just so I'm clear, the only thing that you still need from us, some kind of documentation from Lindsay that.
yeah,
of a
basically it's
management
the plan of care certification. There's some plan
Yeah,
to take care of the plants, yeah.
yeah.
For at least 3 years, and if it were longer, that fits with, well, as you'll see in the order of conditions, it will, as Janice said, be ongoing.
And I would
Yeah.
assume that that old mitigation area can be included within this notice of intent, even though we didn't specifically mention that.
For Lindsay's plan of care? Is that what
Yes,
you
and
mean?
for
Yeah,
that condition
yeah.
to be able to
Sure,
maintain that.
yeah. It might get a little messy,
You
but,
might have to amend the planting plan to include that, so that.
No, Lindsay will have his plan covered.
Yeah.
If I may, the management plan can simply be for the buffer, the vegetated buffer on this property. It doesn't have to be specifically for what we're proposing, I wouldn't think.
But would it include the invasives on the coastal bank that Lindsay's gonna?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's for the,
so-
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
as long as it's on a plan that somebody can see, that's
It's, yeah.
COC time.
You want it on the actual plan showing where he's going to work?
Just to color
Yeah.
code that this is the buffer zone and the coastal bank invasive management in this
Or-
area would make it clear.
Okay.
And I'd almost add it to the site plan and just say
Yeah.
that,
We
you
can
know,
just-
everywhere, because even on the beach, you would want.
well, as long as it's clear that
management.
these parts are from a previous
Yes.
plan. Code it somehow.
Well, I mean, it should be the entire property, shouldn't it?
I don't know, in this case, if it is, then that makes
Well,
it simple.
yeah, I think it would simplify things. We don't have to show it on a plan and revise the plan.
If it overlaps the previous mitigation, then yeah, sure.
Yeah, just for him to do the invasive management on the entire property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's going to be watering as well.
Yes, I believe he'll be installing all of these plants.
Yeah.
Okay.
good. It's a win-win.
So when are we continuing?
Oh, yeah. Did you pick June 7th, 14th, or 23rd, 28th?
The last one will be fine, the
June 28th?
28th?
Excellent.
Again, there's no intention to start this project until September, so.
Okay, great,
We have time and
great.
whatever works with your schedule.
Make a motion that we continue 676 Orleans Road to June 28th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Bennett.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
I vote aye. See you quite a ways from
Should
now.
we shut these off?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if you,
So many people.
Maybe we can.
I guess not.
That's okay, it's all right. There won't be anybody up there.
Thank you.
All right, so the next one was the COC for 49 Gillis Road, but we covered that earlier, that it was continued to 5/24. So next we have the order of conditions for 65 Sears Road, Sears Sears Point Summer LLC, map 11A, parcel 2J14, SE 103518. Proposed addition and just site modifications.
Hello, Ben Aldridge, View Southeast.
Long time no see.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Almost got out of here. So we have the draft order. I saw no issues with it.
There is, let me, though, say something first.
Sure.
Did you get a communique from Nikki in the last hour and a half or a couple hours, or from between,
To talk about the water pitcher plant,
pardon?
the water pitcher plant.
No. No. No, the issue, as I was looking at this, and actually I talked to Janet about it as well, and she had the same sort of impression. You'll remember when we were talking about the mitigation plan this time around, and I think we got a little confused. I think I got confused, maybe Janet got confused, maybe others got confused, because there was a restoration plan on this site, but there's also a previously approved planting plan. And we didn't, whenever you presented to us the changes for the amended order, my recollection is the focus is on hardscape changes. And that was, but no mention was made of changes to the planting plan. Janet actually sort of zoomed in on this, but I think I confused the issue by saying, well, we can't relitigate. I use the word relitigate, you know. But I was thinking about that the restoration area, not the planting plan. But when I looked at the previously approved planting plan and the one that's before us for this amended order, there were some significant differences. And I didn't realize that until today. And I think we need to look at that again, because in particular, based on the previous planting plan that I know about, there were, for example, 6 hydrangeas, non-native hydrangeas proposed, whereas this revised planting plan proposed 24. So I think that's something that we need to talk about before we proceed with this amended order, because it wasn't, you didn't mention it and we didn't notice it.
Okay.
And I don't know why that change was made. And not only that, the particulars for the hydrangeas only say hydrangea, what's the, macrophylla, yeah. And then in parentheses, whatever, blue hydrangea. And that can mean virtually anything. It can also mean so-called mop-head hydrangeas, which produce no nectar, where yet in this plan, they're listed under a label that says native-friendly plants. But if they produce no nectar, they're not native-friendly. So there's that issue as well. So I know this is not your area, that you're focusing on the hardscape and so forth, and you have a landscape person. But I think we probably need to be talking to that person, but unless you're prepared to talk about it.
And I only mentioned water pitcher to begin with because that's where the term hydrangea comes from.
Oh. You were operating at a higher level.
No, just,
But it's also more than that. I mean, when Bob first called my attention to it and we looked at compared the approved planting plan or planting list with what we had before us, it's really very different. In fact, the original one called the natives in the NDZ called for 433 plants, and now under the revision, it's down to 224. And they're different species than what were on there. So I haven't had a chance to really look into this, and probably we would want to have Bernice here to explain the changes and why she thinks we should think they're okay.
Right, why were the changes made? Were they tied to the hardscape changes, or were they just changed for other reasons.
You may notice there were a number of revision dates. The property owner and the landscape architect were working together on quite a few changes.
Okay,
I
well,
mean, even the
Sure.
hardscape plan, we were provided with 2 or 3 different changes before they finally settled on what we proposed.
but the issue, I hope you can appreciate, is that
Absolutely.
it wasn't brought to our attention the scope of those non-hardscape changes to the planting plan, and had they been, we would have dived into it.
Mhm.
And we didn't get that opportunity. So for that reason, I personally don't think we're ready to vote on an amended order, because we're approving things here that we didn't realize we would in fact be approving.
No, that's understandable.
Any numbers?
Oh, they're on the plan itself.
In Dropbox, just for everybody's information, I put the original planting plan, and so that can be compared to the current, which is also in Dropbox. For your paper people, you just have the new plan. Unless you're the type of person who pack rats all of these for the last year. So anyway, that's where we are, I think. Other than that, I'm not sure that we had any, we're ready for an amended order.
Absolutely.
And Nikki worked on it, but she didn't have anything really, she couldn't think of anything to add in, and I couldn't either, other than when I noticed this planting discrepancy. So I'd like, as Janet said, I think we should have Bernice come before us and talk to us about the context of all the planting plan changes.
I think you're absolutely correct. Let's continue for a week, and
Okay, good. A week is good enough? All right,
I would hope so.
okay.
If it does help, the most recent, and I know it's only one, but 225 plants were on the more recent, 224 were on the previous. But that's still, if you had
Well,
433 to begin with. Yes.
The original was 433, though.
Yeah.
That's just baby steps to,
Yeah. If she can come and explain the differences and the reasons. then
and
maybe-
especially I know that the native friendly was a question.
Yeah,
We started this talking about oak leaf hydrangea, whether it was native or native friendly or what it was, and then we stopped and said, oh, but it's too late because it's already been approved, and we all went, oh. But it wasn't.
But it wasn't, yeah. All right, so for a week.
Make a motion that we continue 65 Sears Road to May 10th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
And at least the order's already written, so
Right.
we'll get to the bottom of the last
We'll get to the
detail.
bottom of it, yes.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
All right, the last item of business is 93 Orleans Road, William and Carmel Ferguson, map 15H, parcel 1-14. The unauthorized tree and vegetation removal and jurisdiction. So I apologize again for this being continued. I was doing the timeline and I realized that I started it, then I went out of the office for a little while, and then Paul took it over, and then I came back and I'm taking it over again. So my timeline of the chronology for the order, I'm just trying to work through the emails and between Paul and myself. So I was originally going to say, can we just, approve the brunt of the order, but there was too many dates that were too questionable, so I didn't want to bother doing it until I had a more solid order prepared. So I talked to the Fergusons and their representative, and they were both fine with it going to next week. If you recall, last meeting, we said that they could begin work with the restoration. They haven't done anything since then. So it's just one more week just to get the exact timeline down of everything that occurred. Again, this is my first restoration order, and I kind of didn't realize exactly how intense it would be as far as date-wise.
Okay, yeah, that sounds, sounds prudent, and if they're not hampered by it, then let's do that.
Make a motion that we continue 93 Orleans Road to May 10th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl. Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Yeah, that's all I had. I have no unforeseen items.
Very good. Any unforeseen items up here? No? Okay. Well, yeah, we did pretty well.
Motion to adjourn.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you all. Let's see, we have a bunch of.